So there was this point on Monday when the snow was really starting to come down, and my wife turned to me and she's like, hey, do you think you should go move the van or at least clear some of the snow? I was like, nah, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. 2 hours later, I came out to this. She was right, I was wrong. See, Mammoth received 92 inches of snow in 72 hours, and some are calling it the storm of the decade. And we just happened to be there for it. Here's how the trip went down. And if you're here for the bike stuff, don't worry, we'll get back to that. But look, it's January, it's the off season. I said I was gonna do some different stuff, and this was an incredible trip. To give you some context, Mammoth is a ski resort mountain town that's kind of in central California. It's in the same mountain range as Yosemite National Park. It's kind of due east of San Francisco, northwest of Las Vegas, and just south of Lake Tahoe. So we rolled out Sunday morning, hoping to get ahead of this storm that was coming in. And we knew it was a big storm, but we didn't exactly know just how big it would end up being. We passed all the normal landmarks going up to 395. First you hit the volcanoes, then you go by the Lemon House, you pass the giant cheeseburger, then the Mammoth Beanie. You've got to stop at Copper Top for a quick barbecue lunch, and then you start to get into the snow. So as we're starting to get to these northern towns on the 395, we're starting to see these signs that say, severe weather warning, avoid travel on Monday. And look, I've traveled up and down this highway for the better part of 20 years, and I've never seen signs like it. So we get through Bishop, and as you start the grade up to Tom's place, at about 6,000 or 6,500 feet, we started to see snow on the ground. And at about 7,000 feet, it started to get a little bit icy. Pulled the van over, threw it in four-wheel drive, and kept going. As we get into town, the roads are now completely covered in snow, and those smaller walls are now 3, 4, and 5 feet tall along the sides of the road. We get there right as the sun sets, roll in, find a parking spot, which is limited because there's so much snow. We lug all our stuff upstairs and call it a day. When we wake up Monday morning and pull open the shades, we look outside and it's absolutely nuking. And part of this whole atmospheric river that was going on is that it was dropping a lot of heavy, wet snow. And so you got what they call the Sierra cement, which is this really dense, heavy, wet snow. And it was coming down really, really fast. Not really wanting to get out and ski or snowboard that day, I grabbed my camera and I just kind of started walking around near the village. And what I saw was those walls that were 3 and 4 and 5 feet high were now 6 feet plus, to the point that I couldn't even see over them. And at this point, things are starting to shut down because the roads are just so bad and the plows simply can't keep up. Even the 395 freeway shut down, which basically meant that we were stuck in Mammoth, and that freeway would end up being closed for 2 whole days. After about an hour of taking photos and getting completely soaked, I decided to go back inside. A few hours later, that's when I went outside and realized that my wife was right. I should have moved the van. So I spent the better part of an hour clearing off the van and digging it out from its parking spot. We all hop in the van, drive to our favorite Italian restaurant, Giovanni's. Unfortunately, it's closed because of the storm. We turn right back around, go grab groceries, and drive back up Main Street to Mammoth Brewing. And as we're driving back up, you can just feel the slush and the depth of the snow that you're driving on. The van's kind of a little bit squirrely, and you can feel that there's an extra few hundred pounds on top of the van because it feels really, really top heavy. We wrap up dinner, hop back in the van, drive back, and at this point, you really realize that there's simply too much snow on the ground, and it's probably not safe to be out. So we go upstairs, call it a night. We wake up Tuesday and you can tell immediately that it's noticeably colder. One look outside and you can see that that light, fluffy snow is back. Which sounds great until you start receiving those emergency alert notifications on your phone with avalanche warnings. And then you see that June Lake, just 15 or 20 miles up the road, has an evacuation order because of avalanche dangers. And then you see that the mountain, the ski resort, has ceased operations for the day because of avalanche concerns and because of high winds. And you start to get an idea of just how intense this storm really was. At this point, I'm not skiing or snowboarding, so I do what I do, right? I grab my camera, I walk out, I go to the village, and I just start documenting what is going on. Because this place looks like something straight out of a movie. Now those walls that were 4 or 5 feet tall, they're now 6, 7 feet tall to the point that I can't even see over them. There's even this part by the village where there is a shuttle bus that is almost completely covered in snow. The whole thing is almost surreal. Not only that, but the 395 is still closed in both directions. So even if we want to go home, we're not going home, and neither is anybody else. Based on the weather forecast that we were seeing, it looked like our only window to get out was gonna be right around lunchtime. So we all piled in the van and went to Roberto's to grab some Mexican food, which is just a couple miles from where we were staying. As we wrap up lunch, the snow really starts to come down and the winds really pick up as well. And so now we've got high winds, we've got a lot of loose snow everywhere, which creates kind of this whiteout scenario when you're driving. And if you've never driven in something like that, it's kind of a surreal experience because you become disoriented very quickly and you can't quite tell the texture of what it is that you're driving on. And so you're kind of relying on the feel of the steering wheel and the feedback that you're getting as you're driving. And in my case, I really couldn't see anything on the road except for the headlights that were coming towards me. So there was one point where I had rolled down my driver's side window and I'd kind of like stuck my head out the window in kind of like an Ace Ventura style in hopes of seeing something up ahead, but it didn't work at all. In fact, in many ways, it was even worse, which was hard to imagine considering I couldn't see anything out the windshield and my wipers had frozen and there was now ice on the windshield. It was just a bad scenario. Of all of the driving that I did on that whole trip, that 2-mile stretch from the restaurant back to our place was probably one of the scarier moments of the trip. And I say that in the context of things just felt a little bit out of my control. It's not a feeling that I like to have, especially when you're traveling with your family and they're all in the car with you. At about 9 o'clock, there was a break in the snow, so I grabbed some gloves and a shovel, and I went downstairs and I shoveled the roof of our van. Now, I've shoveled sidewalks, I've shoveled roofs of homes, and I've shoveled driveways, but shoveling the top of a van was definitely a first. Once I was done clearing the roof of the van, went upstairs, relaxed for a little bit, and called it a night. On Wednesday, we wake up, and the general consensus between my wife and I is that if we're here for one more day and the weather's not that great, some real cabin fever is gonna start to set in, so it's probably time that we get back home. Only problem is that the highway is still closed. To buy ourselves a little bit of time, I run to the hardware store, grab some pellets for the pellet stove, do a little bit of maintenance. We all hop in the van, we go to the Latin market for the best breakfast burritos in town, and then we get the notification that the highway is open to southbound traffic only. Hallelujah. When we get near the summit at Tom's place, you start to see those big walls of snow again on the highway, and you start to get a sense of the magnitude of this storm. And it also starts to sink in that you've been part of a really cool experience and an adventure, right? The storm of the decade, 92 inches of snow in 72 hours, an atmospheric river while you're in Mammoth Lakes or on Mammoth Mountain. It's something that we'll remember forever. And in a small way, I hope that it inspires you to seek out something cool, an adventure, a road trip, whatever it might be. Go out, document it, and create a really cool, lasting memory for yourself and for those around you. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for following me along on this cool journey. Again, if you're here for bike stuff, don't worry, we'll get back to it. But it's the middle of January, so we're gonna do some other stuff. Until next time.